Sarah Brennan stared out the window of her attorney's office, watching raindrops race down the glass. The dreary Seattle weather matched her mood perfectly. She absent-mindedly twisted the now bare ring finger on her left hand, still adjusting to the absence of the wedding band she'd worn for the past 12 years. "Mrs. Brennan?" Her lawyer's voice snapped her back to reality. "I mean, Miss Brennan," he corrected himself with an apologetic smile. Sarah turned to face him, forcing a wan smile. "It's fine, Robert. Old habits die hard for all of us." Robert nodded, shuffling the papers on his mahogany desk. "Well, I have good news. Mr. Brennan has agreed to our terms for child support." Sarah leaned forward, her heart racing. This was the moment she'd been waiting for, the culmination of months of bitter negotiations and sleepless nights. "And," she prompted, her voice barely above a whisper, "he's agreed to pay $5,000 per month for each child," Robert announced, a hint of triumph in his voice. "That's $15,000 a month total for Emma, Liam, and Sophia." Sarah's eyes widened. It was more than she had dared to hope for. With her part-time job at the local library, this would give her nearly $20,000 a month to work with. She could finally provide the life for her children that she'd always dreamed of. That's incredible," she breathed, feeling a weight lift from her shoulders. "How did you manage to get him to agree to that amount?" Robert leaned back in his chair, a satisfied smirk playing on his lips. "Let's just say I reminded him of certain indiscretions that might not look so good if they came to light during a prolonged court battle." Sarah knew he was referring to the affairs, the late nights at the office that had nothing to do with work, the very reasons her marriage to Michael had crumbled. She felt a twinge of guilt at using such tactics, but quickly pushed it aside. After all, hadn't Michael's actions torn their family apart? "When does it start?" she asked, already mentally calculating budgets and possibilities. "The first payment will be deposited into your account next Friday," Robert replied, "and every 2 weeks after that. The agreement also stipulates that Mr. Brennan will cover health insurance for the children and contribute to a college fund for each of them." Sarah nodded, feeling a mix of emotions wash over her. Relief, certainly, a sense of justice, perhaps, but also a lingering sadness for what had been lost, for the family that had once been whole. "Thank you, Robert," she said softly, "for everything." As she gathered her things to leave, Robert cleared his throat. "Sarah, if I may offer some advice?" She paused, looking at him expectantly. "This is a significant amount of money. I'd recommend speaking with a financial advisor about how to manage it responsibly." Sarah smiled, appreciating his concern. "Don't worry, Robert. I have big plans for this money, and it's all for the kids. They're going to have everything they need and more." As she walked out of the office and into the rainy afternoon, Sarah felt a new sense of purpose. The divorce had been painful, yes, but now she had the means to build a new life for herself and her children. No more scraping by, no more saying no to dance lessons or soccer camps. She could give them the world. Little did she know that her ex-husband, Michael Brennan, was about to embark on a journey of his own, one that would lead him to question everything about the woman he thought he knew, and the true cost of their broken marriage. Sarah hailed a cab, her mind already racing with plans. As the taxi pulled away from the curb, she allowed herself a small, secretive smile. Everything was falling into place, just as she had hoped. The future stretched out before her, full of promise and possibility. And somewhere across the city, in a high-rise office with a view of the Space Needle, Michael Brennan signed the final divorce papers, unaware that his agreement to pay $15,000 a month in child support was about to set in motion a chain of events that would shock him to his core. Michael Brennan loosened his tie as he rode the elevator up to his penthouse apartment. The past few months had been a whirlwind of legal battles, emotional turmoil, and sleepless nights. Now, with the divorce finalized and the child support agreement in place, he hoped to find some semblance of normalcy. As he entered his home, the silence hit him like a physical force. No pitter-patter of little feet, no squeals of laughter, no calls of "Daddy." It was just him now, alone in this spacious apartment that suddenly felt far too big. Michael poured himself a glass of scotch and settled into his leather armchair, opening his laptop. He had promised himself he wouldn't do this, but curiosity got the better of him. With a few clicks, he accessed the joint account he still shared with Sarah, the one where his child support payments were deposited. The first payment had gone through last Friday, $15,000, a sum that still made him wince, even with his substantial income as a corporate lawyer. But it was for the kids, he reminded himself. For Emma's ballet lessons, Liam's coding camp, Sophia's art classes. For their future. He scrolled through the recent transactions, expecting to see withdrawals for school supplies, maybe some new clothes for the kids. What he saw instead made him nearly spill his drink. 5,000 withdrawn. Location Bellagio Hotel and Casino, Las Vegas. Michael blinked, sure he must be seeing things. But the transaction was there, clear as day. His mind raced. Sarah didn't gamble. She had always been frugal, sensible with money. This had to be a mistake. He scrolled further. Another withdrawal 2 days later. 3,000 at Tiffany & Co. What the hell? He muttered, feeling a knot form in his stomach. As he continued to scroll, the knot tightened. High-end restaurants, designer boutiques, spa treatments. In just 2 weeks, nearly the entire $15,000 was gone, and not a single transaction seemed to be for the children. Michael leaned back, his mind reeling. This couldn't be right. Sarah had fought tooth and nail for this child support, insisting it was all for the kids. He remembered her impassioned pleas in the mediator's office, tears in her eyes as she talked about wanting to give their children the best possible life. Had it all been a lie? He reached for his phone, thumb hovering over Sarah's contact. But what would he say? They'd barely spoken since the divorce was finalized, communicating only through lawyers and terse text messages about the kids' schedules. Instead, he dialed another number. Dave, it's Mike. Listen, I need a favor. Can you do some digging for me? Quietly? Dave, a private investigator and old college buddy, agreed readily. Michael gave him the details, his voice tight with suppressed anger and disbelief. As he hung up, Michael stared out the window at the Seattle skyline, the Space Needle illuminated against the night sky. He thought of his children, wondering if they were tucked safely in bed right now, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing. He had agreed to the hefty child support payments, swallowing his pride and dipping into his savings, all for them, to ensure they didn't suffer because of the divorce, to give them opportunities, to show them, despite everything, that he cared. Now, as doubt and suspicion gnawed at him, Michael made a silent vow. If Sarah was indeed misusing the money meant for their children, he would fight back. Not just for his own sake, but for Emma, Liam, and Sophia. He took a long sip of his scotch, grimacing at the burn. Whatever Sarah was up to, he would find out. And if his suspicions were correct, she had no idea of the storm that was coming her way. As the city lights twinkled below, Michael Brennan began to plan his next move, unaware that his discovery was about to set off a chain reaction that would change everything. For him, for Sarah, and most importantly, for their children. 2 weeks had passed since Michael's unsettling discovery. He sat in his office, blinds drawn, poring over the file Dave had just delivered. With each page he turned, his jaw clenched tighter, his disbelief morphing into cold fury. The evidence was damning. Photos of Sarah entering high-end boutiques, emerging with armfuls of shopping bags. Receipts for spa treatments, designer clothes, and jewelry. But what truly made Michael's blood boil were the pictures of Sarah at various casinos, not just in Las Vegas, but also at local establishments. One image in particular caught his eye. Sarah, dressed to the nines, sitting at a high-stakes poker table. The timestamp showed it was a Tuesday night at 2 a.m. Michael's mind immediately went to their children. Who was watching them while their mother gambled away their future? A knock at the door jolted him from his thoughts. Mr. Brennan, your 2 o'clock is here, his assistant called. Michael cleared his throat, quickly shoving the file into his desk drawer. Send them in, please. As he went through the motions of his meeting, Michael's mind raced. He needed to confront Sarah, but he also knew he needed to be smart about this. One wrong move could jeopardize everything. Across town, Sarah hummed to herself as she prepared dinner. The kids were due home from their after-school activities any minute now. She smiled, thinking of how much easier life had become since the divorce settlement. No more worrying about bills, no more saying no to the kids' requests for new toys or experiences. The sound of the front door opening announced the children's arrival. Mom, we're home, Emma called out. Sarah wiped her hands on a dish towel and went to greet them. Hey, kiddos, how was your day? 11-year-old Emma launched into a detailed account of her dance recital rehearsal, while 9-year-old Liam mumbled something about a math test. 6-year-old Sophia simply hugged Sarah's legs, her big blue eyes looking up adoringly. As Sarah listened to her children chatter, a pang of guilt hit her. She thought of the new designer handbag hidden in her closet, the spa day she had booked for the weekend. But she quickly pushed the feeling aside. Didn't she deserve some happiness too, after everything she'd been through? Her phone buzzed with a text. It was from her new friend Vanessa, whom she'd met at a casino a few weeks ago. Girls' night tonight? Big tournament at the Golden Nugget. Sarah bit her lip, tempted. The kids would be in bed by 9. She could easily slip out for a few hours. Mom, are you listening? Emma's voice snapped her back to reality. Of course, sweetie, Sarah said, plastering on a smile. Now, who wants to help me set the table? As the family settled in for dinner, Sarah pushed thoughts of the casino to the back of her mind. She'd make a decision later. For now, she'd focus on her children, ignoring the little voice in her head that whispered she was walking a dangerous line. Later that night, after tucking the kids in, Sarah stood in front of her full-length mirror. She'd decided to go out after all. Just for a little while, she told herself. She deserved some adult time, didn't she? As she applied her lipstick, her phone rang. Michael's name flashed on the screen. Sarah frowned. He never called this late unless it was an emergency. Hello? She answered, a note of wariness in her voice. Sarah. Michael's tone was cold, controlled. We need to talk now. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. Something in his voice told her that her carefully constructed new life was about to come crashing down around her. About what? She asked, trying to keep her voice steady. About where exactly our children's money is going, Michael replied, his words clipped. I think it's time you and I had a very honest conversation about your recent activities. Sarah's heart began to race. How could he know? She glanced at her reflection in the mirror, seeing not the confident, carefree woman of moments ago, but a deer caught in headlights. As Michael continued to speak, outlining what he knew and what he suspected, Sarah sank onto the edge of her bed. The weight of her actions, the potential consequences, began to crash over her like a tidal wave. The night out forgotten, Sarah realized she was standing on the precipice of losing everything she'd fought so hard to gain. And as Michael's words washed over her, she knew that the real battle was only just beginning. The following Saturday, Michael sat in his car outside Sarah's new townhouse, his hands gripping the steering wheel tightly. He'd arranged to pick up the kids for their weekend visit, but he had arrived an hour early. It was time to confront Sarah face to face. Taking a deep breath, he grabbed the file from the passenger seat and walked to the front door. His knock was met with the sound of hurried footsteps. Sarah opened the door, her smile faltering when she saw Michael's grim expression. You're early, she said, her voice tight. We need to talk, Michael replied, his tone leaving no room for argument. Are the kids around? Sarah shook her head. They're at the park with the neighbor's kids. They won't be back for another hour. Good. Michael stepped inside, noting the new furniture, the expensive art on the walls. All of it fueled his anger. In the living room, he turned to face his ex-wife. Want to explain this? He opened the file, spreading photos across the coffee table. Sarah's face paled as she saw the evidence of her escapades. Casino visits, shopping sprees, spa days, all laid out in damning detail. How dare you spy on me? She hissed, but her indignation was weak, overshadowed by fear. Michael's laugh was bitter. How dare I? How dare you, Sarah? This money was for our children, for their future, and you're gambling it away. Sarah sank onto the couch, her defenses crumbling. You don't understand. After the divorce, I felt so lost. The casinos, the shopping, it made me feel alive again. And what about our kids? Michael's voice rose. While you're feeling alive, who's taking care of them? Who's saving for their college, their future? Tears welled in Sarah's eyes. I didn't mean for it to go this far. It started small, just a night out here and there. But then I won big one night, and I thought I could double it, triple it even, for the kids, you know. But then I lost, and I kept trying to win it back. Michael's anger deflated slightly, replaced by a mix of pity and disappointment. Sarah, you need help. This isn't just about the money anymore. You have a gambling addiction. Sarah opened her mouth to deny it, but the words wouldn't come. Deep down, she knew he was right. Here's what's going to happen, Michael said, his lawyer instincts kicking in. I'm going to petition the court for a modification of our custody agreement. I want primary custody of the kids. No! Sarah gasped, rising to her feet. You can't take my children. I'm not taking them away forever, Sarah, but you need help and they need stability. I'm also going to request that the child support payments go into a trust that I control solely for the children's expenses. Sarah's shoulders slumped in defeat. She knew she had no leg to stand on, not with the evidence Michael had gathered. What do I tell the kids?" she whispered. Michael's expression softened slightly. "We'll tell them together that you're going through some things and need time to get better. They'll still see you, but they'll live with me for now." As the reality of the situation sank in, Sarah broke down, years of pent-up emotions flooding out. Michael, despite his anger, found himself moving to comfort her. "I'm sorry," Sarah sobbed. "I'm so sorry. I never meant for this to happen." Michael sighed, the weight of their broken family heavy on his shoulders. "I know, Sarah, but sorry isn't enough. You need to get help, real help, for yourself and for our children." As they sat there, the remnants of their once happy family, the sound of children's laughter drifted in from outside. Emma, Liam, and Sophia were returning, unaware that their world was about to change once again. Michael and Sarah shared a look, both steeling themselves for the difficult conversation ahead. They had started this journey as adversaries, fighting over money and custody. Now they found themselves reluctant allies, united in the need to protect their children from the fallout of adult mistakes. As the front door burst open and excited voices filled the house, Michael and Sarah rose to face their children, ready to begin the painful but necessary process of rebuilding their family in a new, unexpected form. 3 months had passed since the confrontation. The leaves were turning golden, and a crisp autumn breeze rustled through the trees as Michael pulled up to Sarah's townhouse. It was Sunday afternoon, Sarah's designated visitation time with the kids. He watched as Emma, Liam, and Sophia bounded out of the car, backpacks filled with homework and weekend projects. The children's excitement was palpable, a stark contrast to the tension that still lingered between the adults. Sarah appeared at the door, her smile genuine but tinged with sadness. The past months had taken their toll, but there was a new steadiness to her that Michael couldn't help but notice. "Hi, Mom," the kids chorused, rushing to hug her. "Hey, kiddos," Sarah said, embracing them tightly. She looked up at Michael, giving him a small nod. "Michael?" "Sarah," he replied, his tone neutral. "They've got homework to finish. Liam has a science project due tomorrow." Sarah nodded. "We'll take care of it. I'll have them ready by 7." As the kids disappeared into the house, Sarah hesitated. "Can we talk for a minute?" Michael checked his watch. He had planned to use this time to catch up on work, but something in Sarah's expression made him pause. "Sure," he said, following her inside. In the kitchen, Sarah busied herself making coffee. Michael noticed the absence of the expensive coffee maker that had been there before. In fact, much of the lavish decor he had seen during their confrontation was gone. "I've been going to Gamblers Anonymous," Sarah said quietly, handing him a mug. "Twice a week. It's been hard, but it's helping." Michael nodded, unsure of what to say. He'd seen the changes, Sarah looking healthier, the house becoming more modest, the absence of shopping bags and casino receipts. But trust was still a fragile thing between them. "I've also started seeing a therapist," Sarah continued. "We've been talking about, well, everything. The divorce, the gambling, my childhood. I'm starting to understand why I did what I did." She paused, meeting Michael's eyes. "It doesn't excuse it, I know that. But I'm working on being better. For the kids. For myself." Michael sipped his coffee, considering her words. That's good, Sarah, really. The kids have noticed the change in you. They miss living here, but they understand you're working on getting better." Sarah's eyes welled with tears. "I miss them so much, every day, but I know this is what's best for them right now." She took a deep breath. "I've been thinking about going back to school, finishing my degree. I want to show the kids that it's never too late to turn things around." For the first time in months, Michael felt a glimmer of hope. This was the Sarah he had fallen in love with years ago. Determined, resilient, putting their children first. "That sounds like a great idea," he said sincerely. "Have you looked into programs?" As Sarah began to discuss her plans, the atmosphere between them shifted. It wasn't the easy camaraderie they once shared, but it was a step away from the bitter antagonism of recent months. Their conversation was interrupted by Liam calling from the living room. "Mom, can you help me with my science project?" Sarah smiled apologetically at Michael. "Duty calls. Thanks for listening, Michael, and thanks for not giving up on me entirely. I know I don't deserve your trust yet, but I'm working on earning it back." Michael nodded, setting down his mug. "One day at a time, Sarah. For the kids' sake, I hope you succeed." As he walked to the door, Michael paused. If you need help with tuition or anything for school, we might be able to work something out. Maybe adjust the trust a bit." Sarah's eyes widened in surprise. "Really? Thank you, Michael. That means a lot." With a final nod, Michael left, his mind whirling with the unexpected turn of events. As he drove away, he realized that the anger that had been his constant companion for months had begun to fade. The road ahead was still long and uncertain. Trust needed to be rebuilt, wounds needed to heal. But for the first time since the divorce, Michael felt a sense of cautious optimism. Perhaps, out of the ashes of their broken marriage, a new kind of family could emerge, one built on honesty, growth, and the enduring love they both had for their children. As he turned the corner, Michael made a mental note to call his lawyer tomorrow. It was time to start discussing a path forward, one that could eventually lead to a more balanced custody arrangement. For now, though, he would focus on the present, grateful for the small steps of progress they had made today. 1 year had passed since that autumn day when Sarah and Michael had their first civil conversation post-divorce. The Seattle spring was in full bloom, cherry blossoms dotting the streets, as Michael pulled up to Sarah's townhouse. This time it wasn't just for a routine kid drop-off. Today marked a significant milestone, Sarah's college graduation. Michael straightened his tie as Emma, Liam, and Sophia piled out of the car, all dressed in their Sunday best. The past year had been a journey of healing, not just for Sarah, but for the entire family. Sarah appeared at the door, resplendent in her cap and gown, her face glowing with pride and nervous excitement. "You all came," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "Of course we did, Mom," Emma exclaimed, rushing to hug her mother. "We wouldn't miss it for the world." As the family made their way to the car, Michael couldn't help but reflect on the changes the year had brought. Sarah had thrown herself into her studies, graduating with honors in social work. She'd maintained her commitment to Gamblers Anonymous, celebrating 1 year of sobriety just a month ago. The trust fund for the children, once a point of contention, was now growing steadily, with Sarah even contributing small amounts from her part-time job. The drive to the university was filled with excited chatter. Liam proudly announced that he'd made the honor roll, while Sophia babbled about her upcoming dance recital. Sarah listened intently, her eyes shining with love and renewed connection with her children. As they found their seats in the auditorium, Michael leaned over to Sarah. "Nervous?" he asked. Sarah nodded, a small smile playing on her lips. "A little, but mostly proud. I never thought I'd be here, you know? A year ago, I was lost." Michael reached out, squeezing her hand briefly. "You found your way back. That's what matters." The ceremony was a blur of speeches and applause. When Sarah's name was called, the kids erupted in cheers, Michael joining in with enthusiastic applause. As he watched Sarah walk across the stage, diploma in hand, he felt a surge of respect for her resilience and determination. After the ceremony, as they gathered for photos, Sarah pulled Michael aside. "I have some news," she said, her voice low but excited. "I've been offered a position at a women's shelter. They work with mothers struggling with addiction. I start next month." Michael's eyebrows rose in surprise. "Sarah, that's fantastic! Congratulations!" "Thanks," she replied, then hesitated. "I was thinking, maybe it's time we revisited the custody arrangement. I know I have a lot to prove still, but I'm in a much better place now. I miss having the kids around more." Michael nodded slowly. He'd been expecting this conversation. Let's discuss it this week. Maybe we can start with some extra weeknight dinners. See how it goes." Sarah's face lit up. "Really? That would be wonderful." As they herded the kids towards a nearby restaurant for a celebratory dinner, Michael marveled at how far they'd come. The bitterness and anger that had clouded their divorce had given way to a cautious but genuine co-parenting partnership. Over dinner, as Sarah regaled the kids with stories from her classes and plans for her new job, Michael found himself smiling. This wasn't the family he had envisioned when he and Sarah first married, but it was a family nonetheless. Different, perhaps even stronger, for having weathered the storms. As the evening wound down, with the kids growing sleepy and full of ice cream, Sarah and Michael shared a look of understanding. They had both made mistakes, hurt each other, and nearly lost everything. But through it all, they had found a way to put their children first and forge a new path forward. Walking back to the cars, Michael felt a tug on his sleeve. It was Sophia, her eyes heavy with sleep. "Daddy," she mumbled, "I'm glad we're all together today." Michael scooped her up, feeling a lump form in his throat. "Me too, sweetheart," he said, catching Sarah's eye over Sophia's head. "Me too." As they said their goodnights, with promises of family dinner later in the week, Michael realized that the hefty child support payments that had once been a source of such conflict had, in a roundabout way, led them here. To healing, to growth, to a new kind of family dynamic. Driving home, with the kids chattering excitedly about their mother's graduation in the back seat, Michael felt a sense of peace settle over him. The road hadn't been easy, and there would undoubtedly be challenges ahead. But today had shown him that with patience, forgiveness, and a commitment to growth, even the most broken family could find its way to a new beginning. As the Seattle skyline came into view, Michael made a mental note to call his lawyer in the morning. It was time to draft a new agreement, one that reflected their family's journey and looked toward a more balanced, hopeful future. For the first time in a long while, Michael felt genuinely optimistic about what lay ahead, for himself, for Sarah, and most importantly, for their children.